Maddie,
just
when you publish these things, though, because originally it was just audio, right? The season one, as it were.
Yes, season 1 and 2.
Oh, and two.
What? Oh, yeah. Yeah. What's your question?
Your
So
question,
this is
sir?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is
Yeah,
also
Peter.
video. You're also recording
It is
video
also.
for
Yes,
the three people that
it
listen
is.
and watch this to see. Okay, got it.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yes, there are actually 2 people. So let's,
Oh, sorry, my
don't
bad.
don't oversell it.
If you wanna be in the know about how we put together our little show, if you like to hear the puppeteers and play the characters that you cheer, so join us as we go below the frame.
Welcome to Below the Frame. I am Matt Vogel, and you are here for part 2 of my discussion with Muppet performers Eric Jacobson, Peter Linz, and Bill Barretta, all about the characters that we have inherited, those Muppet and Sesame Street characters that were originally played by another Muppet performer, but now we play them. And now a Muppet character, I'm sure you know this, is only ever played by one performer at a time, and that's to keep the integrity of the character and to provide a through line for the life of those characters that, for all intents and purposes, they seem to live in the real world today. And by that, they can appear on talk shows or in concerts or literally anywhere in the world for one reason or another. And those of us who play characters like Kermit or Dr. Teeth or Statler or Grover are second or third generation of performers of those characters, because there's only been one or two other performers for that character before us. And so when we left off last episode, we had heard about how Bill Barretta and Eric Jacobson had come to play some of their legacy characters. And now we're going to go below the frame to hear a bit about Peter Linz's journey into his characters. Hey, Peter, what was, you mentioned the characters you play. What was kind of your pathway to those characters, be it Ernie or Link Hogthrob, or, how did that happen for you?
Gosh, well, with Ernie, there was an audition. It was an audition process, and I didn't get it.
Yeah, right. There was another performer who had done the voice of Ernie in a lot of Sesame Live shows.
Even while Steve was still officially Ernie.
Yes. And so Sesame Street, they went with another performer, and ultimately it just, for one reason or another, it just wasn't a good fit. It didn't work out.
And so Matt gave me a call. We spoke in person actually as well, and he said, we're not going to have auditions. I'm going to talk to you. You should be Ernie. You just should be. So that's how I got Ernie. Harry, I think Harry was an audition.
I think it was an audition. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Statler and Link, who else was it? Oh, it was just, Steve was gone, and Debbie McClellan was just like, how's your Statler? I was like, well, actually, I think I have a pretty good Statler and Link. And so I just did it. And she's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And how's your Beaker? And I did a little bit of Beaker. I said, but David Rudden really should do Beaker, because he's, he was friends with Richard, and he does a lot of Richard's characters. So I passed on that. And then with Robin, my friend Matt Vogel, after he got to become Kermit the Frog, he had talked with Debbie and said, I think Peter should be Robin. And you were kind enough to call me up and tell me this, and then gave me the tips. And actually, the video you had mentioned about sitting in the hotel room and Jerry talking about Robin, I've listened to that dozens and dozens of times, and I still can't do the voice. I remember Dave I was doing something at Epcot, an overnight thing, doing these shoots with, I think it was Gonzo and Robin, and Dave's like, oh, are you going to be Robin now? Oh. Huh.
What's great about Dave is he has a filter, and he can usually kind of keep those things.
He's really hard
to himself.
It's
very
really
subtle.
Hard
It's
really difficult to gauge how he feels about things. Oh,
huh.
Are you?
How
really?
long did it take you to recover from that?
Well, fortunately I've known Dave for a long time, and I'm still not over
I think
it.
the first time I did Fozzie, there's something happened. Dave said something, and I I had to go away and cry.
Go
a little
cry.
bit. And then come back, and then I was fine.
He gave me a note one time that completely helped me with Dr. Teeth,
Me too. Yeah.
which
Yeah,
was
me too.
because he said, when I would watch Jim perform Dr. Teeth, he would always grit his teeth like this while he was doing them. And then when I started doing that, it started to feel better, even though, it's still different, but it's felt like I was getting grittier. It allowed me to delineate between, three gruffy people, Rowlf and Teeth, and then Bobo, which was a totally separate thing before I was doing really Rowlf and Teeth, Oh, I should mention John Kennedy did Teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I think he also did Floyd
And
for a little
Floyd.
bit before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Muppets Wizard of Oz, I think he did Floyd there.
Yeah. And Dave did tell me one thing about speaking of Floyd. Early on, he I guess I used to do him like quieter or something or smaller or something. He goes, you got to be louder. Jerry was always just loud. They always just tried to be as loud. Like everyone tried to be louder than the other person. So Floyd is loud. And I was like, all right, I'll just be loud. And then I did it, and he was like, that's it.
Nice. I got actually helpful notes from Dave as well with Link. I think we were doing the O2, and he said, your Link is good, just don't push too hard. There's times Jim didn't push. It was just effortltless.
Oh.
Like, well, yeah, because it came from him. I'm working my ass off here. But no, it's like, no, but it was a good note. And likewise, we did a Bert and Ernie thing in New Zealand. And we were talking to this guy who's a big rugby star. Do you remember this, Eric? But I
think I do. Mm-hmm.
He was a man of very, very few words, and so there was a lot of silence, and we were just having this kind of unscripted conversation. And for what I just felt, oh God, we got to keep this thing going. We got to, because there was just these big silences, and so I was just yakking my head off. And afterwards, Dave said, your vocal quality is good, but Jim didn't do it like that. You need to, things would land, and he would listen, and there was these quiet moments, and it was a great note, and it was unique to that situation, but it's applicable to other things, and so Dave was really helpful.
But isn't that the big difference? You embodying the character as a whole versus a voice, right? I mean, imagines that is that ultimately kind of how.
I think so. I mean, it's certainly very different than, say, animation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, in animation, the goal is I really do think it's like the goal is to try to find a voice match more than anything, right?
Yeah.
But those characters, those animated characters, don't go out and they're not on Good Morning America. They're not seen in the real world. They're not interacting with people and living in the real world today and have to kind of be alive beyond the script.
Yeah, and even when they're in a cast of with a bunch of other characters, most of the time they're working in a room like this by themselves.
Right.
And this is like we're a real ensemble.
Yeah, it has to be an ensemble.
Who are like literally sitting in each other's laps. Many times, and
I prefer
you
that.
really do have to. You do have to have some kind of chemistry, not just with the characters, but just personally, face to face with with these people that you're working with, and that's important too. I think.
Yeah, like Pepe doesn't really like Miss Piggy, so that works for you and I.
Yeah, because we don't like each other there.
Right. That's
that
right.
kind of thing. Yeah. No, but I guess too, like
Kermit doesn't really like Miss Piggy either, which is again
there
why
you go.
Eric and I,
Lips and animal. They don't get along.
They don't get along.
No.
Yeah.
No,
like
they don't.
The relationships mirror each other.
Right. They have to.
But the behavior, right? So that idea that. And I think the majority of people, right, are their auditory responses. That is the character. I hear that, right? Mm-hmm. And in Eric's case, spot on, right? Performance, behavior, voice, right? And Peter, Link, and I think I don't feel like I'm a perfect match for Jim's voices. And I guess
Nor do
over
I.
time, it's the personality and I think the energy of those characters and the behavior, I hope, is why people feel that it's become
Well,
I
those
feel that
characters.
same way because I'm not a voice match for Jim or for Jerry or for Richard or any of the
Well,
characters
your
that I
Jerry's
play.
are really great though too. I mean, and
Well,
I mean, there's
and well, you know what? The other thing too, I think, Bill, building on what you said, if you really make the character your own, and do such really truly make it your own, so it comes from you. It sells. The voice, if it's even similar, it's amazing.
yeah. I think
David Rudd.
ultimately, if you get there, if you can get there, I think you have to try and please the masses first, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and
it's all you think about for a while, right?
I
It's
don't know
like,
about
Oh
you
yeah.
guys. It takes. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, I mean, I feel like I'm still trying to lock down Ernie. It is tough, man.
it's
Same
hard.
thing for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and really to truly make it your own and not feel like, oh, I'm just doing an imitation right now.
And then
You know what I
letting
mean?
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
go, right? That's the other
Oh
thing. It's
yeah,
like, okay, I feel good about performing it, but my voice isn't great. So I work on my voice, and then my performance isn't great because all I'm thinking
Right.
about is the voice. So
yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
finding that, right? Trying to bring them together, and that just takes time, I think, right?
And we
Yeah.
all four of us have been performing Muppet characters for, if not 30 years, pretty close, if not more.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, many years. So,
Yeah.
even the performance part, the technical performance part, something might lag a little bit when focusing on one other thing. It's trying to fill both buckets and make all the buckets equal at the same time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and balancing character.
No, it's true.
technical,
Like I
voice. Oh.
and I just read somewhere not too long ago that it's scientifically been determined that it's impossible to multitask.
Oh,
And
really?
so now I'm like, oh shoot.
Now what?
Yeah, now
Right.
what? 'Cause that's what we're tasked to do every time we put on a puppet.
Not too late to go into the priesthood era.
But I wonder if it's this. I think yes. Okay, let's assume that that's true, right? Let's assume that you are not able to multitask. So at the beginning, you're trying to look at the monitor and get used to that and do the lip sync and have a voice. And it is truly trying to multitask. But the more and more proficient you get and the more hours and the more time on camera and the more character and the more all of these things, do they or do they not kind of all go from being all these separate little compartments into one thing? And now they are no longer a multitask. It's just the task. Is that potential?
Ooh,
I think
that's
that's
deep.
fair to say. I mean, I think it doesn't happen as often as we'd like it, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think
Yes.
because there's always a new situation. Nothing's ever the same. Where we're standing, where we're looking, who we're next to, what's in our way, what's
Yeah.
not in our
Yeah.
way. It's always different. So I think we're always multitasking, but I think, oh, well, maybe that's interesting, Matt. Maybe it's once we get a chance to rehearse and we're doing it a few times over. But even then, I think it's still, what's
There
going to
still
happen.
could be something that kind of goes.
Because then Dave Gold says something and messes everything up, and then you guys just start all over.
Oh, that guy.
Exactly. That guy. I'm
Speaking of
telling
people
you.
my characters don't like.
We talked kind of about like the pathway to these legacy characters, and I'll briefly go through mine. Kermit was an audition. That the Muppet Studio picked me to do that job. Sweetums, I don't know how I got Sweetums, other than I was one of the Muppet performers and available at the time, and I had full body character experience. I don't know, Bill, do you remember? I have no
When's
idea.
the first time you did them? Do you remember when that was?
I don't even remember that because I feel like
Because it was John.
Yep.
Well, let's say Richard, John,
Yes.
John Henson.
right, Henson. Then it was you, right?
Did
Or
Noel-
Noel
did
do
Noel-
it
I
before?
think
do
Noel
it?
had done some of it, but I don't know if he did. I don't know if he did vocalization.
Maybe not. Maybe not. And I
don't
think
know.
maybe
Letters
that's what
to
it
Santa,
was.
wasn't he in Letters to Santa?
He is. Oh yeah, he's in that, and Noel, at least in that the scene that I'm thinking of where you had given Lou to me, Noel was playing.
Oh, yeah.
Sweetums.
Yeah. And I think, Gosh, I don't remember. I mean, you would know better than me what your first thing was, but it was.
Yeah,
It came down
clearly not.
again, and no, but I mean, it came down to a voice match and somebody who was willing to be, stupid enough to get in there.
That's me. And also, I think it had to do with that we had maybe it had to do with we have a certain number of Muppet performers, generally speaking, on any particular given project. And
Right.
So we,
Right.
Maybe the idea was to divide up characters between those 6 or 7 of us.
Yeah, that's interesting thing.
maybe.
I'm sorry, just to bring up maybe is that we've been so fortunate that the core group that has grown over time or changed has been able to accommodate these characters.
Yeah.
And not just like, oh, okay, that'll pass kind of thing, right? But that somehow we've been able to find these amongst this kind of a core group of Muppet performers. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's true. It would be difficult, I think, perhaps unmanageable, if every single character was cast individually to a different performer.
Yeah, it would be.
I mean, it might sound like a beautiful,
difficult.
like equitable way to handle things, but it would probably be, the end of the franchise from a business point of view.
And to your point about relationships, Eric, that these characters are fed by our relationships. I mean, just to bring somebody in to do one character, I can't even imagine, somebody going, yeah, that makes, let's just pay that person every time we need them for that one character. That's the other thinking of all of this, right? Which we don't really get
the
into.
Business side.
Yeah. But it's amazing that we've been able to somehow find these characters. I mean, I think the biggest challenge right now is probably Rizzo, even though we haven't really set out to figure that out. Right.
But that would be certainly one. That's certainly one in that I think people ask about. And,
Yeah. So who knows what that will be?
Yeah. Just for a minute, I just want to talk briefly about this. But when I was Carol's understudy for Big Bird. He was 65 years old at the time. He picked me to understudy him. There aren't not understudies. We don't have understudies. It's just not the way that we do things. We don't have a second performer waiting in the wings for their shot. And it's precisely for the reasons that everybody's been saying here is that, well, and some reasons we probably haven't said here, but it has to do with the character's development. And you can't, if you have 2 people, like there's my Big Bird and Carol's Big Bird, and if you put us side by side and we're in the same actual and we did do this, in fact, because there was a thing called Journey to Ernie. And Big Bird, Carol's Big Bird, lived on Sesame Street. And my Big Bird lived in some virtual weird video game world. And they coexisted for a time, which was very weird to me, to have Carol be doing the street story or whatever, and me doing something totally different. Well, and in that way, we don't have understudies because it would be... It's watering down and dividing up who these characters are. Eric, you were going to say something.
No. I mean, Carol being 65 at that time when you were cast, I think everybody thought that it was because he was going to be soon retiring.
Right.
And that turned out not to be the case.
Happening. Yeah.
And so,
not for another 23 years or something, like literally. It's a long time.
Yeah. And so it became this kind of, there were these awkward scenarios where they thought they were taking advantage of this, ability to have, somebody more youthful who can do the more physical stuff and still, have Carol do what he was doing on the street, but it turned out everybody across the board felt, including you, right, that it was a mistake. That it was starting to splinter the character.
It was very weird.
And so you graciously, took a back seat and kind of waited your turn after that, more or less.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, I was certainly there for Carol when he needed me.
Yeah.
But it was always like they would ask if I wanted to do something, and I would say
Right.
Carol, what did Carol say?
Yeah.
Did Carol did Carol okay this?
Right.
And likewise, it wasn't clear when I first started performing Grover Burt on Sesame Street that that Frank was going to be, really gone.
Yeah, and sometimes he did come back.
Yeah, and he would come
There were
back.
times when he came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, and I was always doing the same thing. I was asking, whenever I was approached to do something, I said, did you ask Frank first?
Right.
Like, this is still his character, and this is like a very strange situation because it really, I shouldn't be doing it if he's still doing it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But so he was okay with whatever. At least you, like you said, you're talking to find out if he's still interested in doing it or if he's available, and that's got to be hard.
And so it's but you put the two characters, my version and his version right next to each other, and you're going to see a difference. And that just breaks my heart. I don't want people to be confused as to which is the real character.
Right.
What can you tell me, Eric? What would you say, if you can think of, like, what are the subtleties of taking on, like, Grover? What do you notice? What do you want to bring to your version of the character? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much of it. I mean, I think as puppeteers, we will look very closely at the manipulation and try to emulate the manipulation, although that's probably not as important to most audience members. Most audience is going to be, they're going to look for those hallmarks in the voice primarily. And so, I give a lot of attention to that. But then beyond that, the acting and, the
energy.
I'd say like the energy, the relative dynamism of the performance. With Frank, there's bursts of energy, and then he gets really still, and it just changes direction all the time in his performance. So I try and do that, and that's that's maybe not something that I would do with my own characters as much. So it's something I have to really focus on. Be like, this is what I need to do for this character. For Oscar the Grouch, very different. Much more laconic and kind of unpredictable, but in a way that I think is more about who Carol was as a performer and how he would maybe get lost in his script at times and just kind of like riff around it to get back on track. But I take that and I try and put that in the character.
I always found that as the sign of him being kind of in the moment.
Yes.
That especially with Big Bird, to me, like he just always, to me, when he put that puppet on, always really felt like he was truly. I just envisioned Carol inside, imagining himself as like really being Big Bird and being so in the moment that, yes, maybe there were times when he would have to kind of try to get back on track and go like, where was I? But that it was because he was
being honest,
emulating the character. He really was. Yes.
I remember working with Kevin one time, and we were watching Carol was in The Bird, and Kevin turns to me and he's like, it's magic. It's just magic.
Yeah.
I remember Joey Mazzarino saying, like, he would talk about how we would just, be all on the floor, and we'd all put, they put Big Bird on, and we'd all put our puppets up, and Joey would just look up at Big Bird and be like, oh my gosh, it's like, that's really Big Bird. Like, he's right here. He's like, he's here. He's right here. It's really amazing. I want to go back to something that you were talking about, Eric. When I really got into puppetry and I would watch The Muppet Show, and Sesame Street, I would start to pick up the different styles of the different performers. And I could then see I would see something and very clearly go, that's Jerry. That's definitely Jerry. It was harder for me. Man, that's Jim. I think I could pick out, and maybe some of it was a little vocal thing too. But they all had, those old school Muppet performers all had a very unique style unto themselves. Did they not?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And do you try to bring any of that to your interpretation of those characters?
Totally. Like with Frank, I already mentioned, there's kind of a staccato rhythm, but also in the way he moves, very sharp movements and big, and also he tends to favor the right hand side and throw the puppet over to the right a lot. With Jim, there's a lot of figure eights. With how he moves the head.
Pete, what do you think?
This.
Like, is there something that you do with Ernie?
Oh, absolutely. And right? Sometimes to my peril with Ernie. Because Jim, he skips syllables. So he's not the puppet, because he's just this big melon head. If he hit every syllable, it would look really flappy. So he skips a lot of syllables, kind of like Jerry does as well with a lot of his characters. Also, the way he doesn't react to Bert. Bert will lose it. And, my training and my instincts go, oh, it's like to have a physical reaction. But Ernie just stands there and just watches him. And it's hysterical. It's great. To my peril is that Ernie used to be made out of different materials. And I can see in a lot of the really early stuff, Eric, you might have noticed this too, that Jim can really work that mouth. That mouth opens. It's got a tremendous range, and it just looks light. The truth with the new puppet, it's a lot stiffer. It's heavier. But I want it to move like the old one moved. So I try to do that. But I saw something recently that I did when I was thinking about that. And it's super flappy. It's like way too much.
Oh, really?
Oh, whoa. Slow it down there, son. It's just, it's
I try to, similar, you'd mentioned about Jerry, and he used to skip
a lot of syllables.
So I try to incorporate that into the count. I try to incorporate that into Floyd in particular. Is hard. I kind of feel like a lot of mine are hybrids of my style, which because I was trained by Kevin Clash, there's a precision to it that needs to look a certain way. But then to pull some of those things that I love about the individuality of how Jerry did it and try to, or for Jim, like, because the same thing with Kermit, he does. There's a lot of
figure eights, as Eric says. Absolutely, yeah.
It's so interesting. Like I don't know this at all. But my kind of assumption, if I could assume something for a minute, is I don't think they thought about any of this stuff.
No,
I don't think they did. They didn't. No, they didn't, because they were the first. They were the originators. So they didn't need to.
But it was about the performance. Was the timing working? Is the bit working? Is it funny? Are they playing off of what? Right? It was just about entertaining. And if that piece is working as an entertainment, it doesn't matter if they skipped it, if they looked away, if they...
No one examines it as much as we do. Right. No one.
Yeah.
No one should.
No one should. And the terrible, horrible truth is most of the audience can't tell.
No, they don't know.
They know if it works. They know if the energy's right. They know if the writing's good. They know if the characters. But all the minutia we're getting all geeked out about, nobody cares.
Well, so here's the thing. Then why do we care so much? Like, why does it matter?
Because it matters,
about how if they look good? But does it?
I think there's
makes me nuts.
Subconsciously.
Any
crazy.
I don't know why, but like something that isn't in sync makes me crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, if I see a puppet that's just if they're emoting, they're acting, and the lip sync and the eye focus is good, but that's all I'm getting is lip sync and eye focus, it makes me crazy. I don't see their thought process. If I don't if I don't know what they're thinking between words.
Absolutely.
And do you think that an audience senses that in some way?
I think
subconsciously, I think so.
Yeah.
Like they may not know, like, they used an ISO shot there and the character's looking up here, but there's something that's wrong. Something is just wrong about it. They may not be able to put their finger on.
Something's off. It's just not engaging.
It's like with editing. Like, I don't think most audiences really pay attention to the editing of a movie, but it has an effect on them regardless.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's the same it's the same with what we do. And I think, yeah, we're having to pay attention to all these details that even even our predecessors did not, in an effort to, emulate and recreate something that they originated. But and even if we're the only ones who really care, it does matter. But of course, we have to do all that, and also try and remember to try and be entertaining.
Yeah.
Yes, that is what people
That's the
do
goal.
see and care about.
Well, we're going to put a pin in this episode for now, and we are going to have yet another, a part 3 of my chat with Peter Linz and Eric Jacobson and Bill Barretta, plus some special guests next time. And we'll talk more about our legacy characters, but also about filming Muppets and editing Muppets, that whole process, which is different than when you're dealing with human actors. Plus, we'll talk about a whole lot more. So join us next time when we go Below the Frame. Bye-bye. Below the Frame is a Welcome Matt production produced by me, Matt Vogel. The theme song was written by Stephanie DeBruzzo and myself and performed by my band, The Mighty Weaklings. Thanks to Dave Hulteen at DaveHulteenDesign.com. He created our podcast art. You can follow me on Instagram at WelcomeMattV or search Matt Vogel. I post things every now and again, and it'll help you know when new episodes of this podcast, for example, are coming out. If you are sharing podcasts, please let somebody know about this one. And also, if you have a few seconds, just rate and review this one. I'm sure that pleases the podcast gods or something. You can find Below the Frame wherever you get your podcasts, and we are now a video podcast on YouTube, so you can see our faces if that's something that you want to do. Thanks everybody out there for listening. I am Matt Vogel, and we will see you next time when we go Below the Frame.
Go, go, go below the frame.
I'm going to go away.
Oh,
come
look at
back.
that.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, do that then.
Is that okay?
I see Eric, Matt,
Yeah, do
Bill.
whatever you need to do.
Just be careful,
I don't-
Eric.
Because I can't
I
get
don't
it
have
to
it.
Yeah,
change.
don't lose your arm again.
Yeah, be careful.
All
I don't
right.
have a name. I'm
Bye.
Squadcaster 2H7F. There's Bill, Matt,
Bye.
Eric, and
Yeah, well.
Squadcaster 2H7. I think I've been hacked.